Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are talking about the wild transformation of warfare. I mean, think about it. We went from soldiers packed shoulder to shoulder on a field to pilots flying drones from halfway around the world. How in the world did we get from there to here? That's what we're going to break down.
Okay, so let's start with a really simple observation. An ancient battle looks absolutely nothing like a modern conflict. Back then, a battlefield was a specific place, right? A contained stage. Today, the battlefield is everywhere and anywhere. Understanding that massive shift tells us a story that isn't just about cool new weapons. It's about how our very societies are built.
So how do we get from that contained, almost formal field of battle to a conflict that has no clear boundaries at all? Well, the journey starts not with a bang like you might think, but with a plan. When you think about military revolutions, your mind probably jumps to some new tech, right? A better sword, maybe the first chariots. And yeah, those were important. But the real leap forward, the real game changer, it wasn't a piece of hardware at all. It was something way more fundamental.
The first, and you could argue the most important military revolution, was all about organization. It wasn't about what you fought with. It was about being able to create, supply, and keep huge, disciplined armies in the field on a scale nobody had ever seen before.
And what made that possible, believe it or not, farming. You see, once societies could grow more food than they needed just to get by, it freed people up. Not everyone had to be a farmer anymore. You could have specialists. And for the first time in history, you could have a whole class of people, rulers, commanders, whose only job was to think about and organize for war.
This new organizational power led to some truly terrifying formations, like the Greek phalanx. I mean, just picture it. A dense block of soldiers, sometimes 50 men deep. The strength wasn't about how good any one soldier was. It was about the incredible, unbreakable discipline of the group. It was a literal wall of spear points moving across the battlefield.
So these armies, they needed open, flat ground to work. Combat was almost always during the day because, commanders actually needed to see what was going on. And here's a brutal little fact. Most of the casualties didn't happen during the head-on clash. The real slaughter started the moment one side's discipline broke and they turned to run. That's when the cavalry would just sweep in and finish the job.
And this quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. A better sword is pretty useless if you don't have the organization to make thousands of them and train thousands of soldiers to use them effectively. Technology makes human organization more powerful, it doesn't replace it. And that pattern is going to define this entire story.
All right. The next huge shift comes from a single invention that didn't just change battles, it literally built the modern world as we know it. I am talking, of course, about gunpowder.
For centuries, the medieval castle was king. Defense had a huge advantage. Yeah, attackers could build these giant catapults like a trebuchet, but those thick stone walls were incredibly tough to crack. And then, the cannon arrives. All of a sudden, those high walls weren't protection anymore. They were just big, fat targets. This sparked this frantic arms race, which led to totally new fortress designs, like the Star Fort, with these low, angled walls made just to deflect cannonballs.
And here is the really crucial part. Cannons were insanely expensive. A local lord living in his castle couldn't afford them, but a king who could collect taxes from an entire country, he could. For the very first time, this new technology gave the centralized state a monopoly on overwhelming force. It literally paved the way for the nations we recognize today.
Okay, now let's take a big leap forward into the 19th and 20th centuries. This is the era where the Industrial Revolution kicks in, and the sheer scale of war just explodes beyond anything anyone could have imagined. So get this, at its absolute peak, the mighty Roman Empire, which controlled most of the known Western world, had a professional army of about 450,000 men, an enormous force for its day. Now keep that number in your head.
Now, look at this. In World War I, just one of the many conflicts of the industrial age, the total number of people mobilized was 70 million. That jump is just mind-boggling. It shows you the true power of the Industrial Revolution. This is the concept of total war, where entire national economies, factories, railways, people, They all become engines of conflict.
And all this new industrial power led to terrifying new strategies. Instead of the slow, grinding horror of trench warfare, you get the German blitzkrieg, the lightning war. It was all about shock and speed. You'd use these concentrated waves of tanks and airplanes, all coordinated with radios, to just punch a hole in the enemy lines and cause total chaos. They could do in days what used to take years.
And this brings us right up to our time, the contemporary era, where the very idea of a defined battlefield starts to just dissolve. This is where we directly answer that question we started with.
See, today's conflicts aren't just fought on land or at sea or in the air. The battlefield has expanded. It's now multi-domain. That means operations are synchronized not just across the physical world, but also in space, using satellites, and in cyberspace through computer networks. Even information itself has become a battlefield.
This new reality also means warfare is no longer just a big state fighting another big state. We now see a lot of asymmetric conflicts, where a powerful national army finds itself fighting a small, scattered group of insurgents, a group that doesn't have an army and doesn't play by the same rules at all.
And the tools of this new era are totally different. Drones give you a persistent eye in the sky, able to strike with incredible precision without ever risking a pilot. Hypersonic weapons move so fast they're almost impossible to stop. And a cyber attack? It can cripple a nation's power grid from a laptop thousands of miles away. It truly makes anywhere and everywhere a potential target.
So this whole journey, from the phalanx all the way to the drone, it shows this constant dance between organization and technology. But that evolution is far from over. So what could possibly come next?
The next frontier, well, it's already here. Artificial intelligence. As this chart shows, AI is already a big deal in analyzing data, helping humans make better decisions. But its future is in autonomous systems. And you'll notice the biggest bar here is ethical concerns. The more we move toward weapons that can find and engage targets on their own with less and less human say-so, the more we face some profound, really troubling questions.
And this leaves us with the critical, unanswered question for the future of war. When an algorithm makes that lethal decision, who's responsible? Is it the programmer, the commander who deployed it, the machine itself? It's a question we are only just beginning to figure out how to even ask.